And now, before we break for lunch, our last session of the morning is a special session from our title sponsor, Streamr. So please welcome a panel that's going to discuss the question of who owns your data. They're going to get into solutions that empower consumers to take control of their information, and will address ways in which consumers can own the data in the near future from their cell phone, their car, and even the lights in their home. So this is a sponsored session from our title sponsor, Streamr. Please welcome to the stage.
Hi everyone, welcome to the session. I would like to first of all kick this off with an image you probably all seen earlier this year in April. The image I'm speaking about features Mark Zuckerberg's pale face when he had to testify in front of Congress about Facebook's misuse of user data. And this was not only a wake-up call for Facebook, but also for users around the world who realized that their data had been misused and monetized. And this is also going to be today's session's topic. How can we empower users to regain control of their data? My name is Marlene Ronstedt, and I would like to introduce the three panelists to you. So first of all, we have Henri Pihkala. He is the CEO of Streamr. Streamr is a data marketplace trying to solve the issue of how users can actually monetize their data and gain control of it. Then we have Antti Saarnio here. He is the CEO of Zippie. And Zippie builds a smartphone OS which lets users manage their data and identity using blockchain. And then we have Richard Muirhead here. He's the founder and partner at Fabric Ventures, a VC investing into decentralized networks. So my first question goes to you, Henri. A couple of weeks ago at another conference, you launched the Streamr marketplace. And how does this marketplace empower users?
Yeah, so what the marketplace does is it basically removes the friction between data producers and data consumers so that they can meet on a neutral ground, not controlled by a giant corporation trying to spy on them, but rather enable them to transact directly peer-to-peer with each other. So the marketplace is kind of a manifestation of the kind of applications that can be built on top of the decentralized data infrastructure that we're building at Streamr.
All right, and Antti, your company is building a smartphone OS. And the last major disruption we've seen in this market was back in 2007 when Apple launched the iPhone. So how do you think will blockchain disrupt the phone market of smartphones?
Yeah, the important thing is that the current mobile ecosystem it can't actually continue, or if it continues in this way, people don't own or control their data. And that basically means that we are being personalized in so many different characters that we can be basically manipulated with this data. So I don't see that as a possible outcome in the future. So that means that we need to build a new mobile ecosystem. And that's what this decentralized economy and blockchain can be the starting point for that.
And actually for that, both of you, Antti and Henri, you have a partnership. Your two companies are collaborating, so Streamr is helping Zippie to actually launch a possibility for users to monetize their data. Yeah. So how exactly does this work?
Yeah, so exactly. So what Zippie is doing is that we are turning smartphones into reward engines, basically, that people are being rewarded instead of recorded, basically. And then Streamr is super important in this because one of the key features is that users should be owning and controlling their own data, but there's no reason why users should not be monetizing their data, and that's what Streamr's marketplace is basically doing.
One interesting value chain pattern for us is the crowdsourcing of data. I mean, organizations can already do the heavyweight process of creating the legal structures and creating the payment structures required to share data to optimize their operations. And Streamr can help that as well by removing the friction. But something that is not possible today is for an individual user of a smart device. Let's say it's a mobile phone, or maybe it's a connected car. But anyway, for that user to as a side product of using that device, like using an application or simply existing in some location to share that data and gain some value out of that. Currently, that data is being held by the big corporations and sold to advertisers, but there's so many more use cases and monetization patterns that are completely unexplored at the moment because there's no tools, there's no platforms to accomplish that.
And Richard, your VC fund has actually invested into Streamr and into a couple of other decentralized networks which are dealing with the question of how to decentralize data. Where do you see the future of those data markets?
Yeah, so, I mean, my background, I'd spent some time trying to actually build some companies and focused on complex problems like running data centers and automating the functions within them, and had failed to really crack the nut of how to incentivize and coordinate smart people to solve those problems. So when this wave of tokenization and token economics took off, it resonated with me particularly strongly. Fabric Ventures has come out of it's a spin out, if you will, of OpenOcean, which was a fund set up by the founders and authors of MySQL, so very strong kind of data pedigree. And central to our thesis is that we see that this interaction between this myriad of devices and a new data layer that operates in a new way, and this new, if you will, kind of petri dish provided for algorithms, this whole new architecture is being built, and that it's essential perhaps to create new business models, but it's also essential on a kind of perhaps even existential level for society. It's a question of personal privacy. And so being a venture capitalist, we're in the business of spotting things that are fundamentally important and fundamentally challenging. And so therefore, we think there are going to be many different components of this new architecture that need to be built, and we're looking for those components to invest in. And we're happy to find Streamr.
So, Richard, you just mentioned a keyword here, which is privacy. Antti, how do you think blockchain can empower users, especially when UX problems are being solved by building applications for smartphones, which everyone can use? How can users leverage that for their own gains to gain back their privacy?
Well, I think it's always a question about money. If you want to, currently, there's no privacy because there's no application ecosystem which is respecting privacy. So that means that we need to build a new application ecosystem which is respecting privacy. And I see that token economics is the key thing which is monetizing this whole new ecosystem, and that's why it's possible. Otherwise, it would not be possible. But with tokens, applications having their own tokens, they can incentivize their own community to grow the community and the user base. Then it becomes possible, and that's why it's token economics is the key thing there.
I think another important aspect here is the community, what you just said. Henri, do you think that in this respect, it's rather up to us as the community to build the tools, or should we rather wait for legislators to come out with regulations like the GDPR or?
Yeah, I mean, this spring a lot of advancement has happened. We had the Facebook scandal, and then, like, conveniently, the GDPR kicked in to kind of address that kind of problems. But I think that unless we move towards a trustless system and a trustless economy, legislation can only help us so far, because it does penalize doing the wrong things, but it doesn't guarantee or make impossible to do those wrong things. And legislation varies from country to country, whereas the systems that we're all building are global by definition, right? So privacy should be there by default. It would be there. It should be there from the beginning, and guaranteed by cryptography and mathematics and the incentive mechanisms at play there. And if we as consumers rely on legislation to protect us, then I think we're we're not going to find ourselves in the future that we want it to be.
I mean, I think, as you said, it helped move things forward, the GDPR regulation. It helped highlight the issue, but I would agree that one of the three things that are pushing this along is this panic around privacy. But it is, I think, where it's going to be most effective, because individuals tend to be complacent about privacy until after the fact. It's going to be most effective in organizations where people are realizing they need to move from, I'll try not to be evil to actually I can't be evil. And I think that if you can couple that with new business models that work out, applications that take off, I think that's attracting the attention of organizations, and I think, commercial organizations. I think that is the way we are going to see a change.
Yeah, I mean, it gives them a kind of unfair advantage against competitors if they empower the users of their device versus kind of following the old business pattern of collecting data and selling it. Like, think about this. So you have two mobile phones. You're buying a phone, right, and comparing different options. And one phone respects your privacy and allows you to earn money for the data that you want to share. And the other one is the old, I guess we can start calling them dumb phones pretty soon. but anyway, one that is just a regular phone. Your data goes to, I don't know, Google or whoever, and they sell it to advertisers. Which one do you buy? Of course you buy the one that empowers you as a user, right? Yeah. But this requires a bit of a mind shift from the organizations and the device manufacturers to realize this. And I hope the discussions we're having today will kind of help in that.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
One question I'm having here is, what is here the role of open source software development? Because somehow at the end of the day, companies need to also monetize or make revenues to actually be able to deliver services to consumers. So that question goes to all of you, if you have any ideas how that can be solved.
Yeah, I used to be building a mobile operating system without token economics, with the open source principles, and it's really difficult to monetize that. But now with the combining open source and tokens, with token economics, it's perfectly possible. You can ask licensing companies to stake your token. You can ask dApps or apps to stake your token, which creates demand for your token, and the token value goes up with that naturally without any manipulations or anything. So open source and token economics are perfect couple, in my opinion.
And we would agree. So my partner at OpenOcean, Muirhead, is the guy who authored MySQL. So obviously he's been pretty deep in open source for a long time. And we have a construct that, of sort of 4 eras of open source. And in the second era, people attempted to make money through service and support, but it was pretty challenging. In the third era, major organizations kind of captured these projects, software projects that they didn't really own, and they captured our data and made a lot of money out of that, or at least market capitalization. This fourth era is one that can be fundamentally different, as we've been describing. And we think, the panic around privacy, coupled with, consensus networks that actually, operate, but critically, tokens and token economics, where we do believe there can be a lot of value in tokens outside of security tokens and our outside store of value. That is going to fuel, and people are thinking very intelligently about how to make sure that the right people in these networks are rewarded, which includes, critically, not just the developers who originate the open source software projects, but also the ones who maintain the projects over time, because, maybe forgotten, but pretty critical.
So in the case of Streamr, how do people are then being rewarded?
Yeah. So in the Streamr network, the people who run the nodes are rewarded for contributing bandwidth and storage to the network. So it's a bit like mining, but we don't call it mining because you're not solving this artificial like CPU or GPU hashing problem, but instead you're contributing like actual usable resources to the network and gaining a reward from that. So in terms the infrastructure service that Streamr creates, the messaging service is kind of something that emerges from the cooperation of the different nodes.
One last question which I have to you is, where else do you see the potential of those data marketplaces? So we've spoken about cars, No, actually, we've spoken only about phones. So where else do you see the potential?
Yeah, okay. So I mentioned connected cars. That's something we're exploring with, for example, our partner Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Cars are great devices because they roam the environment all the time, like fleets of cars, your personal cars, public transport, and so on. And they can measure so many different things, starting from road conditions like potholes and stuff, to like blind spots in the mobile network, environmental things like rain, pollution, all these kind of things. And this data is not being utilized today at all because the device manufacturer, the car manufacturer, is not interested in those things, and there's a high threshold of collecting that data and making it useful to others. So by creating this low-friction meeting place for all that kind of side product data, we can actually enable that value to be extracted from the data.
And eventually empower the users again to sell the data.
Yes, of course. You can earn money by driving your car. Like, how cool is that, right?
All right. Thank you, guys. That's already it. Can we have a round of applause, please, for the panelists?
Yes, thank you.